I was sitting in the quarterly all-hands meeting when someone passed a small wrapped gift box down the conference table. The card attached had my name written in elegant script. It reached my manager, Greg, who sat 2 seats away. He intercepted it, made direct eye contact with me, and said firmly, "Don't open that." I nodded, confused, and replied, "Understood." But instead of leaving it there, I quietly slid the box into my laptop bag. After the meeting ended, I walked straight to HR and dropped it, unopened, on Janet's desk. 5 minutes later, I walked past the HR wing and saw Janet frozen at her desk, her face completely pale, phone in hand. That small decision changed everything. My name is Della, and I'm 32 years old. I'd worked as a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech company in Denver, Colorado for 3 years. I thought I was good at my job. I thought I was safe. I thought the system would protect people who did the right thing. I was wrong about all of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that Thursday afternoon, to that conference room with 50 employees packed around tables, watching our CEO drone on about quarterly results. The box had seemed so innocent. A gift with my name on it. Why would anyone tell me not to open my own gift? That's what didn't sit right. That's what made me forward it, instead of obeying. Sometimes your instincts know something your brain hasn't figured out yet. Mine were screaming that something was very, very wrong. I tried to focus on work after I left HR, but my eyes kept drifting toward the hallway that led to Janet's office. 20 minutes crawled by. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "Come to HR immediately." My stomach tightened as I walked down that hallway. The HR door, which was usually propped open, was closed. I knocked and heard Janet's voice, tight and strained. "Come in." Inside, Janet sat with Marcus, the HR compliance officer. Both of them looked like they'd just witnessed something terrible. Janet gestured to the empty chair. "Sit down, Della." I sat, my heart starting to pound. "What's going on?" Janet's lips pressed into a thin line. "Why did you forward that box to me?" "Greg told me not to open it." It seemed odd. I thought HR should handle it. I kept my voice steady, professional. "Isn't that what we're supposed to do with something suspicious?" Janet and Marcus exchanged a look I couldn't read. Marcus reached under the desk and pulled out the box. It had already been opened. He lifted the lid and removed the contents, a USB drive and a stack of printed documents. "We need to understand where this came from," Janet said. "I have no idea. It just had my name on it." Marcus spread some of the documents across the desk, and I leaned forward to see them. What I saw made my blood run cold. Spreadsheets, comparing salaries of male and female employees in identical roles. Women consistently paid 15 to 20% less. Email threads between Greg and other managers discussing strategies to keep costs down by hiring women at lower rates. Internal memos about blocking promotions for female employees who were labeled as too emotional or not leadership material. My hands started shaking. I'd been working there for 3 years, doing excellent work, and based on what I was seeing, I'd been systematically underpaid compared to my male colleagues doing the same job. "Where did this come from?" I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know," Janet said. "The package was unmarked, except for your name on the card. What are you going to do about this?" I looked between them. "This is discrimination. This is illegal." Janet's expression shifted, and I watched her face transform from concerned colleague to corporate robot. She slid a document across the desk toward me. "This is a non-disclosure agreement. We need you to sign it immediately." I stared at the NDA, my brain trying to process what was happening. "But this shows the company is breaking the law. You're supposed to investigate this. Fix it. Report it." Marcus leaned forward, his voice low and firm. The company takes these allegations very seriously, Della. We will conduct an internal investigation, but you cannot discuss this information with anyone. This is confidential company information. Sign here. The pressure in the room felt suffocating. They were trying to silence me. The realization hit me like ice water. HR wasn't here to protect employees. They were here to protect the company. I need time to review this, I said, pushing the NDA back across the desk. Janet's voice hardened in a way I'd never heard before. Della, this is for your protection too. If word gets out that you were involved in leaking confidential salary information, you could face serious consequences. Sign it now. This is in your best interest. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to get out of that room. No, I'm not signing anything without reviewing it properly. I stood up, my legs feeling shaky. Janet's face flushed red. Della, sit down. We're not finished here. Yes, we are. I turned and walked out, my heart hammering so hard I thought they could hear it. As I pulled the door closed behind me, I heard Janet's voice on the phone. We have a problem. She won't sign. I walked back to my desk on autopilot, my mind racing through what I'd just seen. I pulled up my own salary records and compared them to Tyler, a male colleague who had the same job title, same years of experience, same responsibilities. He made $18,000 more per year than I did. $18,000 for doing the exact same work. I stayed late that evening, long after most people had left for the weekend. I printed copies of my performance reviews, all of which were glowing. I saved emails that showed the quality and scope of my work. I documented everything I could think of, driven by a growing certainty that I was going to need evidence of my own soon. When I finally got home that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing that when I walked into that office on Monday morning, everything would be different. I'd made myself a target. By refusing to sign, by seeing what they didn't want me to see, I'd painted a bullseye on my back. But what was I supposed to do? Pretend I hadn't seen proof that my employer had been cheating me and every other woman in the company? Sign away my right to speak about injustice? I couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Even though I was terrified of what was coming next. Friday morning felt like walking into a different office. Greg passed me in the hallway without his usual morning greeting. Didn't even make eye contact. Just walked right past me like I was invisible. At 9, we had our weekly team meeting. Greg stood at the front of the conference room and announced project reassignments. My biggest project, a product launch I'd been leading for 4 months, was being reassigned to Tyler. We need fresh perspective on this, Greg said, not looking at me. Tyler will take point. Della, you'll support him. Wait, I said, keeping my voice professional despite the anger rising in my chest. I've been working on this since January. I know every detail. Why would we change leadership now? It's decided, Greg said flatly. Let's move on. The other team members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But nobody said anything. Nobody defended me. After the meeting ended, I tried to catch Sarah, my work friend for the past 2 years. We usually had lunch together every week, shared stories about our weekends, complained about deadlines over coffee. Hey Sarah, want to grab lunch today? I asked. Oh, I can't. I have a thing. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe next week. She hurried away before I could respond. The cold shoulder was so obvious it hurt. Whatever was happening, people had clearly been told to distance themselves from me. By afternoon, things got worse. I tried to access a shared drive where all our project files were stored and got an error message. Access restricted pending review. I emailed IT, asking what was going on. No response. I tried to work on other tasks, but I felt eyes on me constantly. Greg walked past my desk 3 times that afternoon. never stopping, never speaking, just making sure I knew he was watching. At 5, most people left for the weekend. I stayed late again, driven by paranoia that was starting to feel completely justified. I copied more files to my personal drive, printed more documents, built my own paper trail because I could feel what was coming. I spent the weekend researching employment lawyers and discrimination cases online. What I learned was discouraging. Whistleblower cases were hard to win, expensive, and could drag on for years. Companies had resources and expensive legal teams. Individual employees, especially ones who'd just been cut off from their income, were at a massive disadvantage. Sunday night, I almost convinced myself to let it go. Find a new job, move on, pretend none of this had happened. It would be so much easier. But then I thought about those spreadsheets. 27 women being systematically underpaid. If I stayed quiet, it would keep happening. They'd keep cheating the next woman, and the next one, and the next one. Someone had to say something. Monday morning, I walked into the office, determined to document everything I could. There was an email waiting for me from Greg. Meeting at 10, my office. When I arrived at his office at 10, Janet was there too. They sat on one side of the desk, me on the other. The power imbalance was intentional and obvious. Della, several concerns have been raised about your performance and attitude. Greg started. I felt like I'd been punched. What concerns? My performance reviews have been excellent. Janet pulled out a document from a folder. We've received feedback from several colleagues. Anonymous complaints about you being difficult to work with. Not a team player. Resistant to feedback. I knew exactly what this was. They were building a paper trail to fire me. Create documentation that would justify termination. Protect them from a lawsuit. This is retaliation, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You're doing this because I saw those salary documents. Greg's face hardened. This has nothing to do with that. This is about your declining performance, which we've been observing for some time. That was a lie, a blatant lie, and we all knew it. He slid another document across the desk. A performance improvement plan. 30 days to show improvement or face termination. I scanned the requirements and felt my stomach drop. The goals were vague and subjective. Improve communication skills. Demonstrate better teamwork. Show more positive attitude. There was no way to measure success. They'd designed it so I would fail. I'm not signing this, I said. That's your choice, Janet replied coolly. But refusal to participate in a PIP is itself grounds for termination. I want to speak to the CEO directly about this. Greg's smile was cold. Howard is aware of the situation and supports HR's decision. I left that meeting shaking with rage and fear. Back at my desk, I immediately emailed myself more documents before they could cut off my access completely. By afternoon, I couldn't log into half our systems. I was being systematically isolated, cut off from the tools I needed to do my job, which would then be used as evidence that I wasn't doing my job. The trap was elegant, and I was right in the middle of it. The second week of the PIP was designed to make me fail. Every assignment came with an impossible deadline. Information I needed was withheld. Questions went unanswered. I'd send emails asking for clarification on projects and get responses 2 days later, after the deadline had already passed. On Wednesday, I overheard Tyler on his phone near the break room. Yeah. They told me to document everything she does wrong. Every missed deadline. Every mistake. I'm keeping a log. My own colleague, someone I'd helped train 6 months ago, was being used to build the case against me. When he noticed me standing there, he had the decency to look ashamed, but not ashamed enough to stop doing it. That evening, I stayed late again. Really late. After 10. The office was empty. just the hum of computers and the distant sound of the cleaning crew on another floor. I used my badge to access different floors, looking for more evidence. If they were going to fire me anyway, I might as well go down swinging. On the third floor, I found an unlocked office. The nameplate read Doug Martin, Finance Director. I knew I was taking a huge risk, but I slipped inside and looked around. There were salary documents on his desk, just sitting there. I took photos with my phone, hands shaking, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Notes about compensation strategy that explicitly mentioned keeping female hires at the lowest possible salary bands to maintain margins. Documents about 2 other women who'd been forced out the previous year after raising concerns about pay inequity. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern, a system, years of calculated discrimination. I was photographing the last document when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I froze. The steps came closer. A security guard walked past, checking doors. I dropped down behind the desk, barely breathing, pressed against the wall in the dark. The guard paused right outside the office. I could see his flashlight beam sweep across the doorway. My phone was still in my hand. Screen dimmed, but not dark. If he came in, I was caught. Fired for sure. Maybe arrested for trespassing. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps moved on. I waited 15 more minutes, crouched behind that desk, before I dared to move. When I finally made it to my car, I sat there shaking for 10 minutes before I could steady my hands enough to drive. But I had the evidence. Proof that this went way beyond Greg, beyond HR. This was coming from the finance department, from the executive level. Thursday morning, I contacted an employment lawyer named Patricia Hughes. Her office was downtown, in a tall building with lots of glass and expensive furniture. I showed her the photos, told her everything that had happened. Patricia was in her 50s. Gray hair pulled back, sharp eyes that took in every detail. She reviewed everything carefully, then looked up at me with a serious expression. You have evidence of discrimination. Clear evidence. But I need to be honest with you, Della. This is going to be difficult. The company will fight hard. They have resources. This could cost you everything. How much? I asked. $20,000 retainer to start. If this goes to trial, you could be looking at $100,000 in legal fees. Maybe more. I didn't have that kind of money. Not even close. I had maybe $15,000 in savings, and that was supposed to be my emergency fund. Patricia saw my face and nodded. You could file an EEOC complaint. That's free. But it takes months, sometimes years. Or you could try to find other affected women. Build a class action. That spreads the legal costs and makes the case stronger. Friday afternoon, I reached out carefully to 3 female colleagues through personal email, not work accounts. I kept the messages vague but clear enough. Have you ever felt like something wasn't right with how our company handles compensation? One woman responded, Amy, from the sales department. We met for coffee on Saturday morning at a place far from the office. Amy was in her late 30s, had been with the company for 5 years. She looked tired and worried. I got passed over for promotion twice, she told me, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Both times, they promoted men who had less experience than me. When I asked why, my manager said I needed to work on being less aggressive. Meanwhile, the guys who got promoted were praised for being aggressive. What about salary? I asked. I questioned it last year. They put me on a PIP. She looked at me meaningfully. I eventually signed an NDA, and they gave me a small raise to drop it. $5,000. I took it because I have 2 kids and a mortgage. I couldn't afford to lose my job. How many other women do you think this has happened to? At least 3 that I know of personally. All left quietly. All signed NDAs with their severance packages. Amy leaned forward, her voice dropping. Della, you need to understand something. This goes all the way to the top. The CFO, Doug, he created the compensation structure. The COO, Barbara, she approved it. Even Howard, the CEO, knows. They all know. They're maximizing profit by paying women less, and they've been doing it for years. My hands clenched around my coffee cup. Who sent me that box? I don't know. But someone inside has a conscience. Someone wanted this exposed but was too afraid to do it themselves. Will you help me fight this? I asked. Amy's eyes filled with tears. I can't. I'm sorry. I have kids. If I lose my job, I lose everything. I can't take that risk. I understood. I hated it. But I understood. The system was designed to make us too scared to fight back. That night, I started drafting a formal EEOC complaint. I gathered all my evidence, organized everything, prepared to file. I also started an anonymous document recording everything that had happened, just in case. If they buried me, at least the truth would be out there somewhere. Monday morning, week 3 of the PIP. I arrived to find my desk had been moved. No warning, no explanation. My things had been relocated to a tiny windowless cubicle in the far corner of the office, away from my team, away from everyone. The message was clear. You're not one of us anymore. At noon, I got an email from Greg. PIP review meeting tomorrow. Prepare to discuss your progress. I knew what was coming. They were going to fire me. I spent that evening making final copies of everything, emailing documents to my personal account, preparing for the end. But I also called Patricia and told her I was ready to file the EEOC complaint, whatever it took. Good, she said. File it tomorrow morning, before they can fire you. That way, when they terminate you, it's clear retaliation. So that's what I did. Tuesday morning, before the PIP review meeting, I filed my formal EEOC complaint online. Then I walked into that conference room with my head held high, ready for whatever came next. Greg, Janet, and Marcus were waiting for me. They had a thick folder on the table. My supposed failures, documented, and ready. They went through each item systematically. Missed deadline here. The one where I wasn't given access to the files I needed. Poor communication there. The one where I'd been excluded from 3 consecutive team meetings. Negative attitude. That was me questioning why my project had been taken away. Every single failure they cited had been manufactured. Deliberately created obstacles that I couldn't overcome, then used as evidence against me. I countered each point with facts, with emails showing I'd asked for help and been ignored, with documentation proving I'd tried to do my work and been blocked at every turn. Greg dismissed every piece of evidence I presented. That's your perspective, Della. We have multiple colleagues reporting problems. Janet slid a document across the table. Unfortunately, you haven't met the PIP requirements. We're terminating your employment effective immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of excellent work. 3 years of giving everything to this company. Gone. For cause, Marcus added. And that detail made me want to scream. Termination for cause meant no unemployment benefits. They were making sure I'd have no safety net. This is illegal retaliation, I said, my voice shaking. I filed an EEOC complaint this morning. You know this is retaliation. Marcus's expression didn't change. You're welcome to consult an attorney. We're confident in our decision. You have 15 minutes to pack your desk. A security guard appeared in the doorway. The humiliation was calculated and complete. I walked through the office with everyone watching, feeling 50 pairs of eyes on me as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. Sarah wouldn't look at me. Tyler had the decency to look uncomfortable. Greg watched from his office door with his arms crossed. I handed over my badge and laptop, and the security guard escorted me to my car. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. My career was over. My income was gone. My reputation was destroyed. I called Patricia from my car. "They fired you?" She sighed heavily. "I was afraid of this. But you filed the EEOC complaint first. That strengthens your retaliation claim. How are you doing?" "I don't know." My voice sounded hollow even to myself. "Take today to process. Tomorrow, we fight." The next few days blurred together. I filed for unemployment and was immediately denied because of the for-cause termination. I started applying for jobs, but references were a problem. Greg and Janet would give terrible references. I had 2 phone interviews that seemed to go well, but after the reference checks, the companies ghosted me. My professional reputation was being systematically destroyed. I watched my savings account drain as rent and bills came due. Car payment, health insurance, which I'd lost with my job. The Cobra continuation coverage cost $800 a month, money I didn't have. 2 weeks after termination, credit card companies started calling. I was juggling payments, deciding which bills to pay and which to let slide. The stress was constant and crushing, but I used the time to dig deeper into the company's history. I searched online for former employees, found women on LinkedIn who'd left the company in the past 3 years. I sent careful private messages to 4 of them. 2 responded, Jenny and Lisa. We set up a conference call. Both women told the same story I'd lived. Discrimination? Pip. Forced out. Signed NDAs. I signed because I was alone, Jenny said. I had no money for a lawyer. They offered me $60,000 in severance if I'd go quietly. I took it because I needed to survive. Same, Lisa added. But if there's a group of us, if we're not fighting alone, I'd consider breaking my NDA. That gave me hope. We started building a case together. Over the next few weeks, we compiled evidence. Salary spreadsheets, performance reviews, showing patterns, email chains, proving gender bias. We took everything to Patricia. She reviewed it all, nodding slowly. This could work. This is the foundation of a class action. But we need more plaintiffs. And we need something that proves this wasn't just individual manager bias. We need proof the discrimination was company policy. We kept working, kept gathering evidence. 3 more women joined our group. Then Amy finally agreed to participate. 6 women total, all with similar stories. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe we could win this. Then I got a letter from a law firm, not Patricia's firm, a big corporate firm in downtown Denver with glass towers and 100-person legal teams. I opened it with shaking hands. The company was suing me. They were claiming I stole confidential documents and breached confidentiality agreements. They were seeking $200,000 in damages. I called Patricia immediately, my voice bordering on panic. "This is a SLAPP suit," she explained. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to intimidate you into dropping your complaint. They want to bury you in legal fees. Can they do this?" "They're doing it. Fighting this will cost at least $50,000, even if you win. And the discovery process will expose everything you've been doing. They'll find out about the other women, the evidence gathering, all of it. What do I do?" Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. "You have a choice. You could settle. Sign an NDA, agree to drop your EEOC complaint, pay a small token amount, and walk away. Or you can fight. But fighting could bankrupt you." I looked at my bank account on my phone screen. $823. I had an eviction notice on my apartment because I was 2 months behind on rent. But I thought about Jenny and Lisa and Amy and the others. If I quit now, The company would keep doing this to woman after woman. They'd won before by isolating us, by making us too scared and too broke to fight. I won't settle, I told Patricia. There has to be a way. But that night, lying on my friend Beth's couch because I'd been evicted from my apartment, I wondered if I was being brave or just stupid. 3 months after losing my job, I was working overnight shifts at a warehouse to pay for food and gas. My life had been reduced to survival mode. I'd lost my apartment, lost my savings, lost everything I'd built. The company's lawsuit was moving forward. Discovery had begun. Their lawyers were aggressive, demanding every text message, every email, every communication I'd had. They were going to subpoena my phone and computer. They'd find out about the other women in our group. I called an emergency meeting with Jenny, Lisa, Amy, and the others. We met at a coffee shop, all of us looking exhausted and scared. They're going to come after all of you next, I told them. Discovery will expose everything. I'm so sorry. Amy stood up. I can't do this. I have kids. I'm out. She left before anyone could respond. Jenny and Lisa exchanged worried glances but stayed. Rachel, another woman in our group, looked like she might cry but nodded. I'm staying, but I'm terrified. Our group had shrunk. The pressure was working. They were breaking us apart. Patricia laid out our options. We need something big. Something that proves their pattern of behavior so clearly that the media can't ignore it. Something that makes this too big to bury. Otherwise, they will bury you in legal fees until you have nothing left. I felt desperate and out of options. That week, I reached out to more former employees, casting a wider net. I found a woman named Diane, who'd worked in HR 5 years earlier. She initially didn't want to talk to me, but I kept trying. Finally, she agreed to meet. We met at a coffee shop on Saturday morning. Diane was in her late 40s, well-dressed, but she looked haunted. I worked in HR before Janet, she told me, speaking quietly and glancing around like she was afraid of being overheard. I discovered the pay discrimination scheme 5 years ago. I took it straight to Howard, the CEO. My pulse quickened. What did he say? He told me to bury it. Said the company couldn't afford to fix it right then, that they'd address it gradually over time. But he made it clear I needed to keep quiet. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. When I said I couldn't do that, they forced me out. Offered me a $150,000 severance package with an NDA. I took it. My father was sick. He needed expensive care. I needed that money. So you stayed quiet? Yes. Her eyes filled with tears. My father died last year, and the guilt has been eating me alive. I let them keep doing it. I took their money and let them hurt other people. You can help stop it now, I said carefully. If I break the NDA, I have to pay back the severance plus penalties. Maybe $300,000 total. I don't have that kind of money. I wanted to push, but I understood. She'd already lost enough. I get it. Thank you for telling me. As I was leaving, Diane caught my arm. What if there were enough of you? What if so many people came forward that they couldn't sue everyone? I didn't have an answer. But the idea stuck with me. The legal pressure kept intensifying. The company's lawyers deposed me for 8 hours. It was brutal. They twisted every word, tried to make me look like a disgruntled employee with a vendetta. They asked about my mental health, my relationships, my finances. They were trying to paint me as unstable. I held it together during the deposition, but I cried in my car afterward. Patricia met me for coffee the next day. They're trying to break you, make you give up. Most people settle at this point. I'm not most people. No, you're not. But Della, you need to think about what this is costing you. Is this worth destroying your entire life? I didn't know anymore. I was so tired, so broke, so completely beaten down. That night, I got an email from Rachel. "I'm sorry. I have to back out. I can't risk this." Then another email from Jenny. "Lisa and I talked. We're both terrified. If this doesn't work, we could end up like you." I sat in Beth's bathroom at 2 a.m, crying as quietly as I could so I wouldn't wake her. I'd dragged these women into this fight, and now they were abandoning ship. I didn't blame them. I was sinking, and they were smart enough to swim away. Maybe it was time to give up. Settle the lawsuit, sign the NDA, move to a different city, start over, forget any of this ever happened. I almost did it. I was so close to calling Patricia and telling her to negotiate a settlement. Then at 3 a.m, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No name, just a random string of letters and numbers. The subject line read, "You're not alone." The email contained a link to a secure file-sharing site. My hand shook as I clicked it. What I found made me forget how to breathe. Complete HR records going back 8 years. Systematic discrimination, documented across every department. Internal emails between executives, explicitly discussing the strategy to underpay women. Documents showing that CFO Doug and COO Barbara had received performance bonuses tied directly to something they called compensation efficiency, which was corporate speak for paying women less. But the most damning thing was evidence that the company had falsified documents during a prior EEOC investigation 3 years ago. They'd lied to federal investigators, covered up evidence, obstructed a federal investigation. I stared at my laptop screen, my heart pounding. This was everything. This was the smoking gun that could bring down the entire conspiracy. Another email arrived. I worked there for 10 years. Watch them destroy good people. I'm done being complicit. Use this. Finish them. A friend. I called Patricia immediately, not caring that it was 3 a.m. "Patricia, you need to see this. Right now." She came over to Beth's apartment in her pajamas. We spent the rest of the night verifying the documents, checking metadata, confirming authenticity. As the sun came up, Patricia looked at me with something like awe. "If this is real, and it appears to be, this changes everything. They falsified federal documents. That's not just a lawsuit. That's criminal. What do? We move fast, before they realize it's leaked. And we don't just file papers. We make this so public they can't make it disappear." For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Patricia brought in her law partner, Frank, a civil rights specialist who'd been handling discrimination cases for 25 years. They spent 2 days verifying every document, checking digital signatures, confirming the evidence was authentic and admissible. Frank looked up from his laptop with a grim expression. "This is extraordinary. Falsifying documents during an EEOC investigation is a federal crime. The executives involved could face prison time. The company could face millions in fines." We devised a strategy. We couldn't just release this information randomly. We needed maximum impact. Multiple pressure points hitting simultaneously. First, Patricia filed an amended EEOC complaint with all the new evidence. Then, she contacted the Department of Labor. While that was happening, we reached out to an investigative journalist at the Denver Post named Marcus Stone. Marcus was skeptical at first. He'd probably heard plenty of disgruntled employee stories. But when Patricia showed him the evidence, his eyes went wide. "Give me 3 days to verify this independently," he said. "If it checks out, this is front-page material." Those 3 days felt like forever. But Marcus did his due diligence. He contacted former employees, verified documents, built his own case. On Sunday morning, his article went live. "Tech Company's Decade. Long Gender Pay Gap Scheme Exposed." Executives allegedly lied to federal investigators. The article was detailed, devastating, and backed by hard evidence. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times on social media. By Monday morning, it was picked up by CNN, NPR, and every major network. The hashtag Justice for Della started trending on Twitter. People I'd never met were posting support, sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination. The company's stock dropped 15% in a single day. Shareholders were furious. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Meanwhile, Patricia filed our counter lawsuit. Wrongful termination, retaliation, discrimination. She requested class action status for all affected women. She filed formal complaints with the Department of Labor about the falsified EEOC investigation. She sent a package to the FBI, because falsifying federal documents is a criminal matter. I started reaching out to women again, showing them the evidence. The response was overwhelming. Amy saw the news and called me, crying, "I'm so sorry I left. I'm back. Let's do this." Jenny and Lisa called together. "We never really left. We were just scared. We're with you." Rachel came back. Diane, the former HR employee, called and said, "I'm breaking my NDA. They don't deserve my silence." The group grew. 6 women became 8, then 11, then 15. Former employees saw the news and started coming forward with their own stories. Current employees, seeing the evidence was undeniable, began reaching out anonymously. A movement was building. Marcus Stone wrote a follow-up article featuring interviews with 12 women. The human cost of the discrimination, told in their own words. On Tuesday, protesters showed up outside the company headquarters. Not just women, either. Male employees who were appalled by what they'd learned. People from other companies showing solidarity. Wednesday, current employees started walking out. A walkout in the middle of the workday. 20 people became 50, then 100. The office practically emptied. Tyler, who'd taken my project and documented my supposed failures, sent me an email. "I'm so sorry for what I did. They used me. I was scared for my job. I'm quitting today, and I'll testify if you need me to." "What they did to you was wrong," Sarah called me, sobbing. "I abandoned you when you needed friends. I was terrified of losing my job. You were right about everything, and I'm so sorry." The company was hemorrhaging employees, credibility, and market value. Thursday, the Department of Labor announced a formal investigation. The FBI opened a criminal probe into the falsified documents. The SEC started investigating whether the executive bonuses tied to discriminatory pay practices constituted securities fraud. Our class action was certified. 38 women were official plaintiffs. More joined every day. Friday, exactly 1 week after the story broke, the company's lawyers contacted Patricia. Our clients wished to discuss settlement. Patricia's response was ice cold. "Tell them we'll see them in court." Over the weekend, the board of directors took action. CEO Howard was forced to resign. CFO Doug was placed on administrative leave. COO Barbara announced her voluntary resignation. Greg, my former manager, was fired. Janet and Marcus from HR were terminated. The company brought in a crisis management firm and issued a public apology. Sunday evening, new lawyers contacted Patricia with a serious settlement offer. $20 million to be distributed among all affected women. Mandatory policy changes including regular external pay audits, third-party oversight, and transparent salary bands. Reinstatement offers for anyone who'd been forced out. All legal fees covered, and a public admission of wrongdoing. Patricia presented the offer to our group on a conference call that included all 38 plaintiffs. "We could take this to trial and possibly win more," Patricia explained. "But trials take years. This settlement gives you justice now, guarantees change, and ensures they can't do this to anyone else. We voted. It was unanimous. We'd accept the settlement. During the final negotiations, the identity of our anonymous source was revealed by their choice. It was Marcus from HR, the compliance officer who'd sat in that first meeting when I'd brought the box to Janet. He'd worked there for 12 years. He'd watched the discrimination happen, watched women get pushed out, and he'd done nothing. He'd been complicit in the system. When I saw them target you for doing the right thing, something broke. He told me when we met privately. I'd watched it happen to others. I told myself I was just doing my job, following orders, but seeing your courage, your refusal to back down even when they destroyed your life, it made me realize I'd become the villain in this story. He'd leaked everything, knowing it would end his career. You gave me the courage to do what I should have done years ago, he said. Thank you. I shook my head. You saved us. Without that evidence, they would have buried us. You saved yourself. You're the one who forwarded that box. You're the one who refused to sign the NDA. You're the one who kept fighting when anyone else would have quit. You saved all of us. The final settlement meeting took place in a downtown law office. Della sat with 37 other women, all of them who'd been hurt by the same system. My share of the settlement was $320,000. Enough to pay off the debts I'd accumulated, rebuild my savings, start over with security. But the money wasn't the important part. The important part was the changes. External auditors would review company practices annually. A new diversity and inclusion officer would be hired with actual authority. Pay scales would be transparent. Training on discrimination would be mandatory. Zero tolerance for retaliation would be enforced. Changes that would protect the next generation of women who worked there. 2 months after the settlement, my life looked completely different. I'd paid off my debts. I had an apartment again. I had money and savings, for the first time in months. But more than that, I had job offers. Lots of them. My story had spread, and instead of being blacklisted as a troublemaker, I was seen as someone with courage and integrity. Companies actually wanted those qualities. I accepted a position as director of advocacy programs at a nonprofit organization that fights workplace discrimination. I was using my experience to help other people navigate the system I'd barely survived. The work was meaningful, in a way my old marketing job never had been. Every day, I helped people who were going through what I'd gone through. I helped them understand their rights, connected them with resources, gave them hope that they could fight back and win. The ripple effects of our case kept spreading. The company, now under new leadership, was actually implementing the changes they'd promised. Female employees received raises and back pay. Several women were promoted to leadership positions. The culture was shifting, slowly but genuinely. 3 other tech companies in Denver voluntarily conducted pay audits after seeing what had happened. They didn't want to be the next scandal. The Colorado state legislature proposed new whistleblower protections, inspired by our case. I testified before the state committee about the importance of protecting people who speak up about injustice. The law passed. Some people started calling it Della's Law, though that felt surreal. Sarah and I rebuilt our friendship. She explained that she'd been terrified, drowning in student loans and medical debt, unable to risk her income. The system works by making us too scared to fight, I told her. That's how they maintain power. They isolate us, threaten us, make us feel like we're alone. That's how injustice survives. She nodded. You broke that system. You refused to be isolated. And you showed the rest of us that we could fight too. The group of women who'd fought alongside me stayed close. We met monthly for dinner, supporting each other, celebrating victories, and processing everything we'd been through. These women were my sisters now, bound together by shared trauma and shared triumph. Amy told me at one of those dinners, "You saved my daughter's future. She's 14 now. Because of what you did, she won't have to fight these same battles. You made the world better for her." That hit me harder than anything else. We hadn't just fought for ourselves. We'd fought for every woman who would come after us. I thought often about that Thursday afternoon in the all-hands meeting. The moment someone passed that box down the table. The moment Greg told me not to open it. If I'd obeyed, if I'd left that box unopened, or if I'd opened it myself and stayed quiet, none of this would have happened. The conspiracy would have continued. More women would have been cheated and pushed out, but I'd forwarded it to HR instead. That one decision, that instinct that something was wrong, had started everything. I still didn't know who'd sent the box originally. Maybe it was Marcus, trying to trigger an investigation in a way that wouldn't expose him. Maybe it was someone else who never came forward. Maybe I'd never know. What mattered was that they'd been brave enough to send it, and I'd been brave enough to act on it, and Marcus had been brave enough to leak everything, and the other women had been brave enough to join the fight. Courage is contagious. One person's bravery gives others permission to be brave too. 6 months after the settlement, I spoke at a women's leadership conference in downtown Denver. 300 people filled the hotel ballroom. I told my story, from beginning to end. When they tell you not to look, not to ask questions, not to challenge the system, that's exactly when you must, I said. Silence protects the guilty, never the innocent. They count on your fear, your isolation, your need for a paycheck. That's how injustice survives. I looked out at the audience, at all those faces listening to my story. Yes. There's risk in speaking up. I lost my job, my savings, almost everything, but I gained something more valuable. My integrity, my voice, my power, and I gained sisters, women who fought beside me, who refused to let me fall. The conspiracy wasn't just about money, it was about keeping us small, scared, and compliant. Every time a woman accepts less pay and stays quiet, every time someone witnesses injustice and looks away, the system wins. But every time one person says, "No more," every time someone forwards that box to HR instead of staying silent, change begins. My boss said, "Don't open that box." I said, "Understood." And then I did exactly what needed to be done. I didn't open it myself. I put it in the hands of people whose job was to care. And when they failed, I kept pushing. That's the lesson. Don't do what they expect. Do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because you're never as alone as they make you feel. And the truth, once it's out, can't be put back in the box. The audience gave me a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of women came up to talk to me. They told me their own stories of discrimination, of harassment, of being pushed out for speaking up. They asked for advice. They asked for hope. I gave them both. Back at my desk at the nonprofit on Monday morning, I opened my email and found a message from a young woman I'd never met. "I think I'm being discriminated against at work. I'm scared to speak up. I don't know what to do. Can you help?" I smiled and started typing my response. "You're not alone. Here's what you need to know. The fight continues. But now, I'm equipped to help others fight theirs." The box that was supposed to silence me became the key that set us all free. They tried to use fear as a weapon, but fear works both ways. Now, they're the ones who should be afraid. Afraid of the women who refuse to stay quiet. Afraid of the ones who forward the box instead of obeying. Afraid of the truth they tried so hard to hide. Sometimes the thing they most want to hide is exactly what you need to bring to light. And sometimes the scariest moment, That moment when you decide not to obey is the moment everything changes. Trust your instincts. Question authority. Forward the box. Your courage might just save someone else. It might save everyone. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed injustice at work but felt too afraid to speak up? What would you do if you were in my position? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story matters, and you never know who might need to hear it. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this story and realize they're not alone in their struggles. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about real people fighting back against injustice and winning. And please share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be facing their own workplace discrimination. Someone who needs to know that speaking up can make a difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope it gave you courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's terrifying. Remember, you're stronger than you know, and you're never as alone as they make you feel. Stay brave, stay strong, and never let them silence you.